I thought. Okay. We're going to talk about a couple things this afternoon. Um, and we're going to also do a couple critiques. Um, two people volunteered to do critiques. See if I can hold on just a second. The two different people are Keely and Emily, and so we will hear from them in just a few minutes. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about the annotated bibliography. Um, I was I'd started grading those, and I noticed that there's a common theme that's showing up. How many of you guys are doing the annotated bibliography as opposed to the service learning? Okay. Um, the annotated bibliography is intended so you can prepare yourself for the PowerPoint presentation and then also the later 5-paragraph opinion essay. To get full points on the annotated bibliography, what you should be doing is going through each of the 8 sources that you find, and they can be videos or articles, and then you need to write 5 to 8 sentences summarizing and responding to each of those 8 sources. And to keep, you need to keep in mind while you write that, if you've completely forgot about this artist, what would be important to remember, as well as if some complete stranger who had no idea what art even was came across this, what's the best way to let them know what's going on in these articles and videos. An example would be something like, say you found an article about Sandy Scogglin's process and how what her worldview is, her kind of quirky, dark sense of humor, and how she develops the environments that she takes photos of. Does everybody know who Sandy Scoggin is? Okay, she's the one who did the green room with all the orange cats, or the gray room with all the green cats, stuff like that. And in your article, you would say this article in your annotation. Excuse me. The first sentence would be something like, "This article explores Sandy Scoglin's worldview and her process as it relates in her creating her art." And then second sentence would be, "Her worldview is such and such." And you can see this in some of the artwork that she does more apparently than others. Third sentence would be, it particularly her worldview and quirky sense of humor particularly shines out in this artwork, and name and title. Fourth sentence would be, when she starts her process, she will do these 3 or 4 steps. Then the last couple of sentences would be an example. The first couple steps is, for this one, this is what she did. Next sentence would be example of these steps. This is what she would do, or what she did to finish off the sculpture. And then the last one was, the last sentence would be something like, "I really appreciated this perspective, seeing how the artist thinks about their own work and how they get to what they're doing." So does that make sense? So you're writing something that is summating the article, but is also responding to it, and makes it so that somebody else coming along can read your stuff and not have to worry about reading the whole article, but they can if they want to. The reason why I say this is that the absolute worst annotated bibliography that I have come across to date, the person used 3 to 8 words in their notations for each of the sources, and they weren't even full sentences. And I just felt sorry for their parents. So as you do this, if you have any questions, talk to me. But the initial grading, most people are getting at about a B level because they have all the sources, but they don't have a lot of stuff written down. And you can always look at that and say, okay, well, I can add more sentences here and there, and then resubmit it to get more points. All right? Does that make sense to everybody before I go on? Okay. So how many sentences for each annotation?
5.
2.
8.
Yes, excellent. And how many annotations?
At least 8, right?
Yep, that's right, just 8. Excellent. Now, the next thing we're going to do is talk about the, or we're going to do apply the tools of artistic critique. So Emily and Keely have both volunteered to do that today. Has anybody else here that had volunteered to do that? Or are those the only two? Okay.
I volunteered, but I can go another time. It's fine.
I think we'll have plenty of time. If you would like to do it, I think which piece would you be doing? Would you be doing one of your own works?
Yes.
All right. Which one?
The wire sculpture.
Excellent. This will be perfect. Okay. You will go, if it's okay with you, I will have Keely do her thing, then Emily. She's going to do another person's sculpture and then her own, and then you can go be third. Is that going to be okay?
Yep.
All right. That'll be perfect. Okay. I'm going to do a screen share. I'm going to show the photo for both the Keely's first one, or for Keely's, and then for Emily's first one. All right. Okay, you guys ready for this? I'm going to do screen share.
Question. I plan to do Evan's wire sculpture, and then he wanted to do it today too.
That's the
Is
thing.
that okay?
You and Emily and Evan are all going to be doing the same sculpture. I think it'll be perfect.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll be awesome. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Okay, so how long do you want me to spend? Just like a couple minutes?
What I would like you to do is go through each of those 4 steps,
Okay.
answer 1 or 2 questions under each of those 4 steps. So you can pull that page up on your computer and refer to it.
Yeah.
And don't take any longer than 8 minutes. And you can go a little bit shorter if you want. The average is going to be about 5 minutes, and that's perfectly fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the sculpture here, it's made of wire, like a dark wire. It looks like at some points kind of like barbed wire because of how they're like joined together. It looks like a chicken and like looks like there's eggs down below as well. I guess you can tell it's a chicken because there's like this beak and it has like the general form of a chicken. Did you want me to like say which one I'm talking about or just go through all of them?
Just go through all of them,
Okay.
one after another.
Okay, so that one was description. I thought it was kind of interesting what Evan did with like using different like at some points with the sculpture there's like open spaces, like there's greater space between the lines of the wire, and then other places there's like it's more dense. It's like he's trying to bring more detail or attention to them, so like around like the face and down like where the eggs are and like the tail. I think like with the overall mood it's kind of just like happy but also just like here it is, you know. For interpretation, so my family has chickens, and so I'm like pretty familiar with like what a chicken looks like and what eggs look like under a hen, and even like a hen that's like sitting on chickens for like hatching them. And so like seeing this, it just brings back a lot of memories of watching a hen raise her chickens. And so with like the meaning of this, maybe it's like a meaning of like us taking care of our own children and how like it can be, I don't know, like protective almost, like with the barbed wire fear, like that we're like protecting our chicks. For judgment, I think this work was really, really good for our like assignment because Evan did a really good job at like showing the overall shape and feel of a chicken while also adding some interest in the inside of the chicken by showing the eggs, and I thought that was a really good use of the wire. So that's all.
All right, that's excellent. That's really good. Um, did I tell you guys the story about the lady that did this in like almost a half an hour?
Oh, gosh.
So yeah, so you did this in about 6-7 minutes. That's perfect, absolutely perfect. And one thing that I really liked about what you did was you went right down the steps, and looked at the questions, and answered a couple of the questions for each one, just like we talked about. So that's perfect. Now I'm going to ask you another question that's not part of this. Going through that process, do you see it a little bit different than you did when you started 7 minutes ago?
Yeah, definitely. Like I've always just like looked at it as just like, oh, here's a chicken, but like now trying to like interpret what it means, that's like different because sometimes the meaning isn't always clear in an art piece. So it's kind of interesting taking my own interpretation into like what a chicken sitting on her eggs means. So,
All right, that's excellent. Hey, thank you very much. This is great.
thanks.
All right, next up is going to be Emily. Same kind of thing. Pull up your sheet. Would you like to do your own work first and then this, or would you like to do this and then your own work?
Let's start with the chicken.
Okay. Is it still on screen?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm just going to apologize in advance. I'm recovering from a small tongue procedure, so if I sound a little weird, it's because of that. So, this is a black wire chicken. It's a bit hard to tell the exact size of it, but based upon the pictures of it on the paper, it seems to be most likely more than 6 inches in height, and the wire is coiled together to create the bulbous shape of a chicken, outlining some details like the comb and the beak, while keeping other parts of it more simplified, such as the rounded parts of the body and the more hidden kind of wings. So it's interesting because the wire seems to be coiled more tightly towards the top of the chicken, which helps to balance the heaviness of the eggs at the bottom, bringing the piece together and helping the eye to move throughout the entirety of the piece. The almost checker-like pattern that presents itself on the front of the piece with the curved feather-like texture towards the back gives it a more flowing feeling and makes the piece more interesting to look at and observe. The eggs especially are a very nice detail because they add a bit more to the piece, making a little bit more mysterious and interesting overall. I also feel that this has to do with protection, but I was thinking more motherly instinct, since, at least in my own experience, hens can be very protective of their chicks. And I also see the barbed wire effect, and because the eggs are encased within the chicken, it's that internal protection that mothers have towards their young to keep them safe and to keep them out of danger. And I think this piece kind of pulls towards that with just the positioning and the overall theme and look of the piece. Personally, I think this was a very well done piece. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more variety and texture, but I really do think this is a very well done piece, very brilliantly. There's a lot of thought and effort put into it, and it's a very intriguing work of art to observe.
All right, that is excellent. Very well done. Okay, I'm gonna pull back. All right. Now, and you sound fine. Is your tongue okay?
Yeah, I just got it clipped.
Okay. If you get to a point where you don't want to talk anymore, we'll stop and do it next week. Okay.
No, I'm fine. I'm on pain meds.
Okay, great. Now, what I liked about that, seeing what Emily did as opposed to what Keely did, they're talking about the same thing, but they both approached it completely differently, didn't they? And I thought that was really well done. The only thing that was similar was that Emily referred to a barbed wire texture as well, and I thought that was really nicely done. Now, Emily, do you want to do you have a photo of your own piece, or do you want it? Do you have it in front of you that you can hold up? Oh,
I
okay,
have it in
great.
front of me.
Okay. All right. Now, as you tell us this, just pretend that this is the first time you've ever seen it.
Okay. So this is a wire sculpture. It is made of silver wire that is very thin. It's approximately the same size as a normal hand, though a bit smaller and a lot thinner in the fingers and overall form. It seems to be a hand with some sort of plant-like structure in the middle, almost as if it was a flower sprouting from the palm. The wires are coiled around the fingers, giving them more texture and helping them to be defined from the almost spiderweb-like quality of the palm, with the wires of the palm actually following the sort of bone structure of an actual hand. So it's very nice that the artist used the coiling technique on the fingers to help give them a little bit more definition and helps to give them more of a rounded feel towards the end as they loop back on themselves. It seems to be one continuous wire, which is interesting and that's why the coiling was used and the spiderweb-like qualities of the palm. The flowing nature of the flower, the curved wires of the petals make it seem a little bit more organic than the palm, helping it to be connected a bit more to nature, it seems, giving it more of a, whimsical feel. I interpret this piece as kind of nature being in the palm of a person's hand, what humans can do to help nature grow and keep and protect from our own actions, that we can help things bloom and basically help to keep things safe from our own actions on the environment. And probably has a little bit to do with just gardening. Gardening has always been a pretty big part of my life, and I've always loved the spring with flowers, so perhaps it's just that. Overall, I think the piece is pretty well done, though I do feel like it could have been fleshed out a bit more, perhaps a little bit more time spent, or a way for it to stand up on some sort of pedestal. But overall, I think that it works pretty well, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Excellent. Well done. I thank you very much. That was really well done. Okay, now Emily and Keely have set the standard for the entire class from going forward. So Evan, you sure you still want to do this today?
Sure, why not?
You want to pull that picture up again?
I think you pulled it up, right? Can you pull it up?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought that's what I was saying. That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
All right. Can everybody see that?
Okay, so this appears to be a chicken. One could assume that it may have started as a rooster. That's, of course, just an assumption, but it's currently a chicken. Though the material is stylized in terms of the wire and the method of construction, it doesn't really look like the artist used any kind of stylization in terms of defining the form. When what I mean by that is it looks like a chicken would look if it was made out of wire. It's dark in color with some rough texture, but also some smooth texture with what appear to be feathers on the tail. There are eggs inside of it, which are created through coiling of wire, and it's kind of difficult to see, but it looks like there's some wings on both sides of it as well. Let's see, analysis. I think what the artist likely did was used pliers to twist the wire because it appears to be rebar, which is difficult to manipulate by just your hands, especially without gloves. So he or she, I don't know, probably used wire or pliers to bend the wire and twist it around each other. It does appear that most of the twisting is done at the top of the chicken, like along the back and tail. I would assume that is likely just out of utility's sake, that it's not necessarily intentional, but this artist just started at the top and went and worked around to define the form. Other than that, it appears that the eggs definitely have a different form than the chicken because they are almost completely curvilinear and have fewer barbs than the chicken does on its back. This piece could appear to just be a mundane object or subject, that is. But a possible interpretation is that it actually represents our relationship with the world, specifically the intersection between technology and humanity, the way that has impacted our history. The eggs representing something possibly philosophy, religion, and war encased in a cage of greed and want being the chicken protecting the eggs, or not necessarily protecting, but influencing them for sure. That's one possible interpretation, though I'm sure if you ask the artist, he would say that's incorrect and probably a load of crap. The value of this piece, I think, is found in its simplicity and the way that form is defined through simple lines. It's undoubtedly, whoever the artist was, is probably extremely attractive and prolific in everything that he or she does. But that can just be assumed because of the definition of the beak and the little feathery things up there. And I believe that that's where the values is derived the most, and the most accurate representation and indication, I suppose, of the artist's prodigious talent and eloquence, for sure.
All right, excellent, very good. All right, I'm gonna, before I say anything about what Evan just did, I'm gonna give two code words. Two code words are ginger and Alabama. And I'm gonna do roll really fast. So is Alyssa here? How about Delane? James, you're here.
Yep.
All right, Sage.
Sage Gurney is here.
All righty. Hazel.
I'm here.
Excellent. Hayden.
I'm here.
All right. Emily. You still here?
Yes, I am still here.
Excellent. Emery. How about Brinley? Okay, is Cassidy here? How about Kayana? Taylor, are you here? Sage? The other Sage? Nope. Okay. Michael. I see Michael. Is the smell of the 20 kilos of chocolate still permeating everything, or did it all get cleaned up?
I mean, as far as the factory goes, it pretty much always smells like chocolate, but my laundry smells like chocolate as well still, yes.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah.
All right, Karen, are you here? Keely.
Yeah, I'm here.
All righty. Evan, you're still here? Is Hillary here?
I'm here.
All right, excellent. Okay. So again, those first two code words are ginger and Alabama. What I was amazed with when Evan was talking about or doing his critique is how much he knew about the personal facilities of the artist. That was just astounding.
They're
And
just
how he was able to
assumptions.
beat
You
that
have
with
no
a-
idea if those are true. Those are just assumptions.
Oh, okay. One thing I like that you pointed out too was whatever abstraction of the object there is an abstraction due to necessity as a result of working with a particular medium, not an intentional abstraction to emphasize different elements. And I thought that was a good point because that's something that a lot of the times people don't really. That's a subtle distinction that I think a lot of the times we don't always necessarily pay attention to. Every time we go into a different medium, every time we use a medium for something, there is going to be some level of abstraction away from what the naturalistic thing is. If it's a painting, then the abstraction will be squashing it to two dimensions. If it's a sculpture, it will be um, taking the object and just making a snapshot in a moment of time. And so but that abstraction is due to the change that the object goes through as we manipulate a material, and not an intentional, or not necessarily an intentional abstraction on our own part. So I thought that was a good point to bring out. Now, what are some of the good points that you guys saw here listening to these critiques? 3 different people talked about the same object. What was interesting about all 3 people talking about the same object? Did they all describe the exact same thing, but did they all talk about it in the same way? How different were they?
Well,
Anybody? I'm sorry?
well, being one of the people who presented, I can say that it was very interesting. Well, going second meant I had to think a little harder, and it made me look at the piece a little bit more and find things I hadn't exactly seen or thought of before. And it's interesting that you're able to focus in on very specific details and ideas, but that there's so many different ones to explore in a single piece, and that different people and different personalities can pick out different things.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point. Evan, can you show by just putting your hands apart about how big is this object?
It's like this.
Okay.
Yeah, probably like the width of a basketball.
Okay.
I don't remember.
So it's interesting, like what Emily was saying. It's not a huge thing. I think it would look fantastic if it was made out of 1/2-inch rebar and was like 30 feet tall. That'd be really cool. But it's not a huge thing. But each of the 3 of you were able to pick out completely different elements to focus on, and I think that's a really big thing to take away. That's valuable because it shows that each of us, even if we all did the same object, each of us would talk about it differently because we all have our own sets of understandings and our own worldviews. So I think that's really worthwhile. Now, what were some of the things that were common between all 3 people? Of course, other than the word chicken.
A lot of the descriptions were fairly similar. You know, black wire, curves, barbed wire. Kind of.
I thought it was interesting that both Keely and
What's that?
sorry, my computer's cutting out, so I'm sorry if I just spoke over someone. I was just saying I thought it was interesting that Keely and Emily both had the same interpretation of kind of like a motherly instinct or protection.
whereas Evan, who was obviously the creator, had a different interpretation, but it was still kind of about the relation. It was about relationships between two different entities.
I thought it was interesting that they have that interpretation too, especially because there was no motive behind the work. It was just it was what it was, and so there was no meaning behind it. And so listening to other people try and fabricate some meaning or derive some meaning from it was entertaining, knowing that I just made a chicken to make a chicken.
Well, there is something to that, but there's also something to the fact that you did make the choice to put eggs inside of it. You didn't have to do that. And so, what's going on inside of your mind? Why did you make that choice? And sometimes the choice consciously is just, it feels like the right thing to do at the moment, or I'm just going to do this because I have to waste another hour on this stupid thing.
That was it. That was the one.
But what's fascinating is that there is still something underlying those choices. And I think when we hear other people talk about our work, a tendency is to kind of duck our heads and kind of hide and pretend that it's not us. But I think that we should kind of appreciate what other people are reading out of the stuff that we're doing. Because the reality is, as artists, you tap in habitually to stuff that most people are never even aware of. And even if you're not aware of it to the level that you can verbally articulate it, you're still tapping into it. And that's what's informing the choices that you're making as you're creating. And sometimes I've heard, I've learned more about some of the pieces that I've made and my motivations behind it by hearing other people critique it than I have just thinking about it myself. And I think that that's going to be true for everybody. As we hear other people critiquing our work. So I think that that's great. Before we move on from this, I would like to get at least one or two volunteers. At least one volunteer for Tuesday, at least one volunteer for Thursday, and another couple of volunteers for next Friday to do the same kind of critique. Who would like to volunteer to critique either their own work or somebody else's on Tuesday? I mean, who's actually going to be at class on Tuesday? So that rules Michael and Evan, everybody whose last name starts with something higher than M, out. Who would like? Is that Hazel?
I'll volunteer on Tuesday.
Hayden? Okay, excellent. Who would like to volunteer for Thursday? Either to do their own work or somebody else's.
I will go on Thursday.
All right, excellent. That'd be great. And who would like to volunteer for next Friday?
I could volunteer for next Friday.
Okay, that'll be awesome. Now, what worked really well today is that I think it was Keely and Emily both sent me photos of this from the chat. And so, James, when you get ready to do it, just sometime on Friday, just send me the photo of the piece that you want to do, unless it's your own and you have it in front of you and you can hold it up. Okay?
All right, sounds good. I could do that.
All right. Excellent. Okay, now moving on. I wanted to talk a little bit about our two objects coming up. One thing that I've noticed with the structure with skin is a couple of the things that I looked at were still really two-dimensional, where somebody made triangles instead of triangular prisms and put it together, and it still was really flat. And another person made their modules about the size of those little cutie tangerines, so it was really small. Do you guys remember about how big the modules are supposed to be that you make, the building blocks? About the size of your fist or so, about a baseball size. And then you know about a half a dozen of them, something like that, so you can play with the repetition of form. And if you guys have already turned that in, I'll make some comments and stuff on it. And if you're not happy with the grade, it is perfectly fine on anything to come back and resubmit anything. Now, the last thing is I want to talk a little bit about cardboard. did going through those slides yesterday and Tuesday help anybody to start thinking about what they want to do for their cardboard? One thing that will really help is doing a drawing of an object that you'd like to make, and the object doesn't have to be real. It can be a fabrication of lots of different ideas. And then just kind of imagining cross sections in different parts of it. And then when you get to class, you'll cut out those cross sections and then just kind of figure out while you're working with it how to get them together. We have lots and lots and lots of masking tape, and I find that for the cardboard sculpture, that is about the best thing that you can use. I think that, I'm sorry?
Just to clarify, this sculpture is supposed to be like those like balsa wood dinosaurs you could get at Thanksgiving Point that are like sort of 3D, but it's just a bunch of slots in panels.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm really hoping that nobody makes a cardboard dinosaur unless it's your own unique design. Like a new dinosaur that nobody's seen before. But yeah, exactly. That's the kind of thing. We're cutting and slotting it together. So we're asking the viewer to kind of finish it by skinning over the piece in their imagination. And the size of this, we're looking at, I said 15 to 18 inches in class. I'm thinking it's closer to about something like basketball size, maybe a little bit bigger. If you can do this about 12 to 15 inches long at one axis, that's going to be something that'll be pretty successful. One person took this and they didn't want to make a big thing like that. So what they actually did was they bought, and I don't know if I told the Thursday class this or Tuesday, they bought a laundry bag, one of those mesh laundry bags from a Dollar Tree, and then they made cardboard models with that slot and cut tab construction of a typical grocery run. So there was a 3D pop can that had 3 vertical panels to kind of define the length of the pop can, and then several rings to kind of flesh out the body of it. There was a carton of milk that was kind of the same kind of a take on an object, but it was an elongated rectangle with the top being peaked. And there were just several other things, like some fruit, different, like a banana, an orange, and a couple apples. And just several different things like that. And when he displayed it, he put it all in the bag and set it on the table. And it was really a very interesting take on this idea, because it still can be considered as one single object, but he made several smaller things that kind of fit together thematically to flesh it out. Now, does anybody have any questions today on any of the things, like the annotated bibliography, the sculptures that you're working on? Next week, we are going to be primarily focusing on the cardboard in class, but we're still going to be revisiting the carving. So you'll be working on the cardboard the following week. You'll probably be working on that at home, and you'll probably be finishing up the carving as much as possible the following week. Okay? So let's see. The week of the 22nd through the 29th, we'll be working on the cardboard, and then the end of March and the first part of April, we're going to be focusing on the carving again, that week there. All right, to revisit it. And while we do that, we're also going to be talking about the last project that we do. And then this weekend, I'm going to be sending out the stuff for the PowerPoint, which the PowerPoint and the opinion essay are both going to be due at the end of the term. But the PowerPoint, what we're going to be trying to do is get those all presented during the Friday Teams meetings that we have. So since we only have like a half dozen more of those, well, I think maybe 5 of those, it'll be kind of interesting to see if we can cram everything all together. But we'll do our best. All right, does anybody have any last questions for me after all that?
I have a question about the structure with a skin project. Can it be like one of those polyhedra shapes, or does it have to be like an abstract shape?
If you do like a polyhedra stuff, it might be interesting to address it for looking at it from a little bit different perspective. For example, if you're doing a dodecahedron, I would make the modules each have be a pentagonal prism, so that the pentagon base is actually the dodecahedron facet, and the prism goes towards the center of the volume of the dodecahedron. And you could start with that and then see if there's an interesting way to put those modules together. So that's how I would address that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know,
oh, sorry.
yeah, go for it.
I have a question. I was wondering, can I do smaller modules, but do more of them? So instead of 12, do like 24?
Yeah, that'd be totally fine. That'd be very interesting to see what happens.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I am really sorry to disappoint everybody, but we're going to end just a couple minutes early. Give you a jump on the weekend and give you time to revisit the annotated bibliography, because I know that everybody's been chomping at the bit, super excited about doing that. I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing everybody next week. If you have any other questions, make sure and email me, and I will think seriously about actually reading my email. All right, and the last code word before we sign off is lavender. All righty? And you guys that were present don't need to worry about them, but there it is. All right, we'll see you guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.